purchaser shall form a single-purpose entity prior to closing, and purchaser has no intent to obtain legal and equitable title to the property, correct?
That's what I read.
You referred throughout your testimony to Green Hills LLC as the equitable owner of the property, correct?
Correct.
All right. Were you aware of those provisions of the agreement prior to your testimony here tonight?
I was aware of a real estate purchase agreement being executed or drafted.
Were you aware of those specific provisions in the agreement?
No, we don't, our firm does not get involved in the purchase agreement.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the Carnarvon Township Impact Evaluation, which is part of the application packet. It's marked as Exhibit A1. For a large number, if not all, of these evaluated impacts, is it the applicant's position that the board should impose conditions requiring future compliance with requirements, and that the applicant would comply at the time of final plan approval?
Can you restate that?
Sure. Is it the applicant's position with regard to these impacts which are evaluated, that the applicant can simply say to the board, impose a condition that we comply and will demonstrate compliance at final plan approval?
Correct. A number of those items that impact, in particular storm, traffic, and the like, sanitary and water, that is typically addressed through the plan development, or in this case, the final PRD process.
Okay, so
Certainly would be subject conditions to consideration of a final plan approval.
So when you say that items are typically complied with during land development approval, are you familiar with Article 7 of the Municipalities Planning Code?
Not in front of them now.
Okay. Are you generally familiar with the requirements for tentative plans in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar then that there is a subsection of Section 707 of the Municipalities Planning Code, which states that the application for tentative and final approval of a development plan for a PRD, they spell out Planned Residential Development, prescribed in this article shall, quote, be in lieu of all other procedures or approvals otherwise required pursuant to Articles 5 and 6 of the MGC. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not clear if you're asking him for a legal conclusion.
I'm not. I'm asking if he's familiar with the language.
I mean, we have 707A open. What section do you want him to?
Subsection 6.
Help me out again. I got 706.
My question, Mr. Otero, is, are you aware that when proceeding pursuant to a PRD application, that an applicant will not need to go through the land development process?
Yes.
Okay. So with regard to, at least to these evaluated impacts, there won't be an opportunity for the applicant to demonstrate for compliance, or for the township to mandate compliance during any future land development process, correct?
I think that's calling for a legal conclusion. Something to impose an objection.
Well, his testimony, I believe, was that the board could impose conditions and the applicant could demonstrate compliance during some future approvals process. I'm trying to get a handle on what he understands that future approvals process will look like.
You understand the question. If you don't, you can ask for it to be sort of rephrased.
The way I understand PRD is a two-step process through the municipality, where we have a tentative plan, which is what we've submitted and are discussing tonight, and then a final plan. The final PRD plan is akin to, in my opinion, the final land development procedure, where the granting of a tentative plan of approval does not necessitate what's shown on the tentative plan is approved in its entirety. We must show compliance with either outside agency or township municipal township standards or requirements in regards to engineering, lighting, and that sort of other detailed information. So my understanding of the PRD process is that the final PRD plan is when a lot of the comments raised in the township engineer's comment letter will be shown to be addressed in the township requirements and or outside agency requirements.
Okay, that's your understanding. So again, with regard to these evaluated impacts, we simply have the applicant's statement that it will comply in the future. Is that correct?
We will show compliance, correct,
In the future.
in a final plan.
All right. With regard to stormwater management, you mentioned it, and I know you're not the professional who prepared, who's looking at stormwater management. But are you familiar with the fact that the Carnarvon Township ordinance for PRDs requires that an applicant demonstrate that its stormwater management plan or concept is feasible? Are you familiar with that?
I'm absolutely familiar with that, yes.
Okay. The applicant, your testimony was that the applicant has not done any, I believe your testimony was that, and if it wasn't, please correct me, that the applicant has not done any on-site stormwater infiltration testing yet, correct?
I believe it's in process.
Okay. So are you the professional who's was responsible for putting together the plan that we see up on the screen?
Yes, our firm, Stackhouse Fencing, yes.
Okay, and somebody else in your firm told you to put stormwater management, to label some areas of the plan as stormwater management, correct?
Yes, our civil engineer.
Okay, do you know what process went into, what work process led to you being told to put stormwater management, to label certain areas of the plan as stormwater management?
Well, based on earlier objections, I'm going to defer to our civil engineer to discuss the locations of the depicted stormwater facilities.
Do you not know the work process that went into there, or you just think that he would be better to answer?
I do. I think there's probably more technical responses that would satisfy your question.
Okay. All right, just bear with me 1 second here. You said you submitted or will serve letters to the sewer authority and to the water service provider, correct?
Correct.
Have you received those will serve letters back?
I received an email from the water authority's